Hello, good morning, everybody. Let us read the next chapter, and the name of the chapter is A Bicycle in Good Repair. So, let us see what it is written about the chapter before we go through it. If you wish to go on a long bicycle ride, if you want to go for a long ride on your cycle, the bicycle should be in good condition. Naturally, if you want to go for a long distance, the bicycle must be in a good repair, good condition. If possible, an expert mechanic should overhaul it. If it is possible, an expert mechanic should repair it thoroughly. But what happens if the machine has a will of its own and the mechanic knows next to nothing? But suppose the machine start doing its own will and the mechanic knows nothing to repair about the cycle. Let us read this funny story. A man I knew proposed one evening we should go for a long bicycle ride together on the following day, and I agreed. The author says, a man of my acquaintance, or a man whom I know, a man known to me, one day proposed, gave an offer one evening that we should go for a long bicycle ride. We should go for a long distance on bicycle on next day. And I agreed. I gave my consent. I got up early. I got up early in the morning. For me, I made an effort and was pleased with myself. I got up early. I made an effort and was pleased with myself, happy with myself. I was on time. I got ready on time with efforts. He came half an hour late. But the man with whom I was supposed to go on the bicycle ride, he came late. That was 30 minutes late. I was waiting for him in the garden. In my garden, I was waiting for him. It was a lovely day. It was a beautiful day, cheerful day. He said, that's a good looking machine of yours. How does it run? As he saw my bicycle, he appreciated it. He said, that's a good looking bicycle. How does it run? How it is? How good it is in running? Oh, like most of them, I answered. Easily enough in the morning, goes a little stiffy after lunch. I told him, this machine is also like other machines. It's a useful machine. Easy enough in the morning. In the morning, I can easily run it. And a little stiffy after lunch. But after lunch, it becomes a little stiff, difficult. He caught hold of it by the front wheel and the fork and shook it violently. He caught hold of my bicycle from the front wheel and fork and shook it violently, quickly, fastly. I said, don't do that, you'll hurt it. I said, don't do this way, it will be hurt. I did not see why he should shake it. I could not understand why he was shaking my bicycle. It had not done anything to him. My bicycle had done nothing wrong to him. Then I could not understand why he was shaking it. Besides, if it wanted shaking, I was the proper person to shake it. And even if my cycle was in need of a good shaking, waking, beating, I was the proper person to that because I was owner of this bicycle. I felt much as I should had he started waking my dog. I felt as annoyed as if he had started waking, beating my dog. He said, "This front wheel wobbles." He said after shaking, "The front of the cycle is wobbling." That is shaking, moving, unsteady. I said, "It does not if you don't wobble it." I said, "It will not if you do not shake it." It did not wobble. Earlier, it did not shake. As a matter of fact, nothing worth calling a wobble. There was no problem with the bicycle before you shook it. The problem has occurred only once you have shook it. He said, "This is dangerous." He said, "This wobbling, this shaking, this unsteadiness is dangerous. It's not good, it's not safe. Have you got a hammer? Have you got a hammer with you to struck it with?" I ought to have been firm, but I thought that perhaps he really did know something about the business. I ought to have been firm. I ought to have denied him. But I thought that he knows something about the bicycle repairing. I went to the tool shed to see what I could find. I went to the tool shed to find the hammer. When I came back, he was sitting on the ground with the front wheel between his legs. When I came back, he was sitting on the ground and the front wheel of my bicycle was in his legs. He was playing with it, twiddling it around between his fingers. He was playing with the front wheel. He was turning the front wheel with his fingers. He remnant of the remnant of the machine was lying on the gravel path beside him, and the remaining part of the bicycle was lying on the ground on the gravel road beside him. He said, "It looks to me as if the bearings were all wrong." He said, "It looks to me that the ball bearings of the wheel have gone wrong." I said, "Don't you trouble about it anymore." I said, "You don't bother much about it. You will make yourself tired. You will be tired. So let us put it back and get off. Let us put it back and we should go for our ride." He said, "We may as well see what is the matter with it now it is out." He said, "No, we should check what is wrong with it." He talked as though it had dropped out by accident. He talked to me as if it has happened by an accident. Before I could stop him, he had unscrewed something somewhere. Before I could finally stop him, he had already started opening the screws. And out rolled all over the path some dozen or so little balls. And as soon as he opened the screws, so many small balls came out and spread all over the path. "Catch them," he shouted. He shouted, "Catch all those balls. Catch them. We must not lose any of them." He said, "We must not lose a single ball." He was quite excited about them. He was very excited. We crawled round for half an hour. We crawled on the ground in search of the balls for half an hour and found 16. We found 16 of the balls that came out of the bearing. He said he hoped we had got them all. He said that they have got all, because if not, it would make a serious difference to the machine. And if they have not got the all balls, then it will be difficult for the machine to move. I put them for safety in my head. It was not a sensible thing to do, I admit. So I placed all those small balls that we collected in my head, though it was not a good idea to keep them in it, but I still placed. He then said that while he was about it, he would see to the chain for me. He said that while he was doing all these things, he would check the chain for the cycle and at once began taking off the gear case. Immediately he started removing the gear part of the cycle. I did try to dissuade him from that. I did try to deny him to do that. I told him what an experienced friend of mine once said to me solemnly. I told him how one of my friends once advised me, if anything goes wrong with your gear case, sell the machine and buy a new one. It comes cheaper. That one of my friends once suggested me that if the gear of the vehicle cycle goes wrong, it's better to sell that and buy a new one because it is cheaper. He said people talk like that who understand nothing about machines. He said those people who do not know anything about machines talk this nonsense. Nothing is easier than taking off a gear case. Nothing is easier than removing the gear case of the cycle. I had to confess he was right. I had to accept. He was right. In less than 5 minutes, he had the gear case in 2 pieces, lying on the path, and was groveling for screws. Because within 5 minutes, he has opened the gear, parted it into 2 pieces. They were lying on the path, and he was searching for the screws. He said it was always a mystery to him the way screws disappeared. He said it was always a mystery, a secret to him, that how the screws that he opens disappear. Common sense continued to whisper to me. My common sense continuously told me, stop him before he does any more mischief. My common sense was telling me, stop him before he does any more mistakes. You have a right to protect your own property from the ravages of a lunatic. Yet you should have the right to protect your own machine from being destroyed by a mad person. Take him by the scruff of the neck, just catch him by the neck and kick him out of the gate. This was his common sense telling to him constantly. But I am weak when it comes to hurting other people's feelings, and I let him muddle on. The author says I am weak when it comes to hitting others or hurting others' feelings, and I allowed him to destroy my bicycle. He gave up looking for the rest of the screws. He stopped now. He could not search for a longer time for the screws. He said screws had a knack of turning up when you least expected them, and that now he would see to the chin. He said, let us hope he will get the screws later on, and now started repairing the chain of the vehicle, the cycle, He tightened it till it would not move. He tightened it till it will not move. Next, he loosened it until it was twice as loose as it was before. So sometimes he over tightened it, sometimes he over loosened it. Then he said, we had better think about getting the front wheel back into its place again. Then he said it would be better that he should fix the front wheel back before fixing the chain. I held the fork open. I got hold of the fork open, and he worried with the wheel. He was he was fixing the wheel. At the end of 10 minutes, after 10 minutes, I suggested him should hold the fork, that he should hold the fork, and that I should handle the wheel, and we changed places. Now I was fixing the wheel and he was holding the fork. At length we did get the things into position, and the moment it was in position he burst out laughing. Finally we were able to fix it, and as soon it was fixed he started laughing loudly. I said, what is the joke? He said, well, I am an ass. He said, I'm a stupid person, I'm a fool. It was the first thing he had said that made me respect him. It was the first thing that made me respect him, that he has accepted that he is a fool. I asked him what had led him to the discovery. I asked him how he came to know that he is a fool. He said, we have forgotten the balls. We have forgotten to add the balls to the bearing. I looked for my hat. It was lying topsy-turvy in the middle of the path. I looked for my hat in which I have placed the balls, but it was lying there upside down in the middle of the path. He was of a cheerful disposition. My friend was of a cheerful attitude. He said, well, we must put back all we can find and trust to Providence. He said, let us search for the balls again and let us hope that God will help us to find all. This time we found 11 instead of 16. We fixed 6 on one side and 5 on the other, and half an hour later the wheel was in its place again. In half an hour's time we could fix the wheel again. It need hardly be added that it really did wobble now. Now there was no doubt the wheel was shaking now. A child might have noticed it. Even a child could see it, that it was moving. He said it would do for the present. He said that for present time it will do. It will shake. I said, watching you do this is of real use to me. That watching you do this is of great use to me. It is not only your skill that fascinates me, it is your cheery confidence in yourself, your inexplicable hopefulness that does me good. He said, it is not only your skill of repairing the bicycle that attracts me, it is your cheery confidence in yourself, that however confident you are, your unexplainable hopefulness, how hopeful, how least hopeful you are, that does me good. Thus encouraged, he set to work to refix the gearbox. By encouraged my words, he started repairing my gear case of the cycle. He stood the bicycle against the house and worked from the off-side. Then he stood it against a tree and worked from the on-side. First he made the cycle to stand with support of the house and then to a tree, and he was repairing it from both the sides. Then I held it for him while he lay on the ground with his head between the wheels and worked at it from below. and dropped oil upon himself. Then I hold the cycle for him. He was lying on the ground and his head between the wheels and was working there below. And in this process, he dropped oil upon himself. Then he took it away from me and doubled himself across it till he lost his balance and slid over on to his head. Then he asked me to leave it. He himself will handle the cycle. And in this process, the cycle fell over him. Then he lost his temper and tried bullying the thing. He was angry and he started being angry on the bicycle. The bicycle, I was glad to see, showed spirit, and the subsequent proceedings degenerated into little else than a rough and tumble fight between him and the machine. I was happy to see that my cycle was also equally excited to fight with the so-called mechanic. And for the further proceedings, there was a good fight between him and the machine. One moment the bicycle would be on the gravel path and he on the top of it. One moment the cycle was on the path, on the road, and he on the top of the cycle. On the next moment the position would be reversed. That is, the cycle on him and he on the ground. He on the gravel path, the bicycle on him. Now he would be standing flushed with victory. He was full of joy. The bicycle firmly fixed between his legs. The bicycle was firmly fixed in his legs, but his triumph would be short-lived. But his joy would be short-lived. By a sudden, quick movement, it would be free itself and turning upon him, hit him sharply over the head with one of its handles. And then, with a sudden, quick movement, it fell down, turned upon him, hit sharply on his head with one of its handles. As a 1:15, when it was the time 12:45, dirty and disheveled, very dirty and I should say destroyed. His whole clothes were in bad condition. Cut and bleeding. He had wounds and injuries. He was bleeding. He said, I think that will do. And rose and wiped his brow. He says, this will do. He stood up and cleaned his brows. The bicycle looked as if it also had had enough of it. It seemed that bicycle was also tired that I had enough tolerated this. Which had received most punishment, it would have been difficult to say. Which had received most punishment, it would have been difficult to say. I took him into the back kitchen where, so far as was possible, he cleaned himself. Then I sent him home. So the bicycle looked as if it also had had enough of the bullying, which had received most punishment, it would have been difficult to say. I could not say who had got the more punishment. I took him into the back kitchen. I took him backside of the kitchen, and as far as possible he cleaned himself, and then I requested him to go home. It was written by Jerome K. Jerome. It's a funny story how his friend offered him to go for a bicycle ride, and instead of that they spent almost half of the day in repairing the bicycle, that also very foolishly. Thank you.